My sister kicked my 12-year-old daughter out of my parents' house while I was on a business trip. I called my mom and she said we weren't needed there. So I stopped paying their bills and now they risk being on the streets. My sister booted my 12-year-old daughter out of my parents' house while I was away on a business trip. When I called, Mom told me we weren't even needed there anymore. So I stopped paying their bills and now they're at risk of being homeless. I never imagined I'd be back, standing in front of my parents' door after all these years. My name's Bella, and this house holds memories I've long tried to forget. My phone still buzzes in my pocket from Mom's urgent call, and behind me my car sits in the driveway while my thoughts drift to my 9-year-old Emma, whom I just dropped off at my friend Sarah's place. I told Emma it would only be a couple of hours, even though I didn't feel nearly as confident as I tried to sound. The last real conversation I'd had with my parents was at my grandmother's funeral 3 years ago. Before that, I remember the awful day when I was 18 when they chose my sister Lisa over me. I stood right here, tears streaming down my face, as they announced they'd given my college fund to Lisa for her wedding. But it's my education. I screamed. Mom just said, "Your sister needs a proper wedding. You can take out student loans like everyone else." I left that day and never really came back. Only my grandmother stood by me, helping me pay for community college. I never made it to the prestigious university I dreamed of, but I worked hard, earned my degree, and built my own life. Years blurred into determination and small victories. I met Jack, my ex-husband, during my final year of college. We got married, had Emma, and for a while everything felt perfect. Even after our divorce 2 years ago, things stayed civil. Jack pays good alimony and we both always put Emma first. Now at 36 I'm doing okay. The apartment I bought with my inheritance from Grandma, God bless her soul, brings in steady rental income. And between that, the alimony, and my part-time job at Marshall & Associates, I can spend plenty of quality time with Emma. Taking a deep breath, I rang the doorbell. Whatever they want, I reminded myself. I wasn't the scared 18-year-old anymore. "Bella, you came." Mom greeted me as she opened the door. Her enthusiasm caught me off guard. She looked older, with more gray in her hair and extra lines around her eyes. Dad stood behind her, forcing a smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Where's Emma?" Mom asked, peering around. "We haven't seen her since she was with friends," she added. I interrupted her, stepping inside. "You said it was urgent." The house still smelled the same. Mom's vanilla air freshener mixed with Dad's coffee. They led me into the living room, where I noticed how worn everything looked. Even the fancy furniture they bought for Lisa's wedding was showing its age. "Would you like some tea?" Mom asked, nervously wringing her hands. "Just tell me why you called," I said, standing there. Without warning, Mom burst into deep sobs, not the quiet tears of my childhood, but full-on shaking cries. Dad wrapped his arm around her, and I felt my stomach drop. "We're going to lose the house," he finally said. I waited, knowing there was always more with them. "Your sister," Mom began, and I felt that familiar twist in my gut. Of course it was about Lisa. She asked us to take out a business loan for her husband's company, using the house as collateral. I guessed. "Let me guess, her husband's business went under?" Dad explained, avoiding my eyes. "Lisa isn't paying and her husband's business has gone bankrupt. They've stopped making payments and we can't cover it on our own." I started laughing, and they both stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Maybe I have," I said. "So you called me, the daughter you abandoned, the one whose college fund you sacrificed to bail you out of Lisa's latest mess. We know you're doing well," Mom quickly added, wiping her eyes. "Your apartment's rental income. We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate." I stood there, looking at the people who had chosen my sister over me at every turn, who didn't even invite me to her wedding, who barely acknowledged me at my grandmother's funeral because Lisa was pregnant. "I'll think about it," I heard myself say, surprising them as much as myself. Then I realized I needed to pick up Emma, and as I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was about to make either the biggest mistake or the most important decision of my life. Later, as I picked Emma up from Sarah's place, she asked, "Mom, why are you crying?" Emma has always been too perceptive sometimes. I quickly wiped my eyes, not even realizing I'd been crying during the drive. "Just thinking about some stuff, sweetie," I said, trying to sound casual. "Actually, I saw your grandparents today." Her eyes lit up instantly. "Really? The ones from the pictures? Can I meet them?" Of course, she'd want to. They're her grandparents, even if they've never really been a part of her life. That week, I wrestled with my thoughts, barely sleeping as I played out every possible scenario in my head. Over coffee, Sarah told me, "You're insane after everything they did." I admitted, "Maybe I am. But Emma deserves a chance to know her grandparents, and maybe I need this too, to finally face it all." So a week later, I found myself driving back to my parents' house, this time with Emma bouncing excitedly in the passenger seat. The reunion was strange. Mom burst into tears again, and Dad just stood there awkwardly until Emma broke the tension by running up and hugging them both. They looked shocked at first, then delighted, and for a moment I saw genuine joy in their eyes, the kind I once saw directed at Lisa. We spent the afternoon together, and I watched as Emma charmed them completely. She proudly showed them her drawings, talked about school, her friends, and even the time she won the spelling bee. They listened to every word. That evening, as Emma chattered happily about her grandparents on the drive home, I made my decision. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was setting myself up for more hurt. But I was going to help them. The next day, I called my real estate agent and arranged to rent out my apartment again. Then I called Mom. "I'll help with the loan payments," I said before I could change my mind. "I'm moving in with Emma. The rental income from my apartment will go toward the loan payments, and I'll help with the bills too. But we need to set some boundaries." There was silence on the other end. Then Mom began crying again. "Thank you, Bella. Thank you so much." Within 2 weeks, Emma and I had moved in. I even bought new appliances. A fancy refrigerator with an ice maker that Emma loved, a dishwasher that actually worked, and a washing machine that didn't sound like it was about to break down. Dad's back problems eased once he didn't have to wash dishes by hand anymore, and Mom genuinely seemed happy to have us there. Life settled into a surprisingly comfortable routine over the next few months. Mom started making breakfast for everyone, and despite my initial reservations, I had to admit it was nice coming downstairs to the smell of fresh coffee and pancakes. She picked up Emma from school, helped her with homework, and even started teaching her how to bake, something I never had the patience for. Dad switched to part-time work. His constant backaches improved with less physical strain, and he even taught Emma how to play chess, a game I never learned. Their weekly chess matches became a cherished tradition. Meanwhile, I found myself working longer hours at the office, comforted by the thought that Emma was well taken care of. One day my boss, Mrs. Thompson, called me into her office. "We've noticed your increased dedication lately. How would you feel about a promotion?" The new role meant more money but also more responsibility, including frequent business trips to other states. In the past, I would have turned it down immediately, single mom, no support system, but now I surprised myself and said, "I'll take it." I remembered how nervous I was on my first trip. 3 days in Chicago felt like an eternity, and I kept repeating, "She'll be fine," maybe 100 times. And she was. Mom sent me pictures of Emma doing homework, having dinner, even playing with Dad. It all worked, but there were moments that made me uneasy. There were little things that kept me up at night, like when Mom would get phone calls from Lisa and disappear into her room, emerging with red eyes, or when I'd see bank transfer notifications on Mom's phone, with money going to Lisa's account. "She needs help sometimes," Mom defended. When I confronted her, "Mom, I'm paying all your bills and the loan for Lisa's default. How is it fair that you're sending her money?" she snapped defensively. "Lisa's not to blame for Tom's business failing. She has 2 kids to feed, and I have 1 child and all these bills." I shot back, but Mom quickly shut down the conversation, as she always did when it came to Lisa. These arguments became more frequent, but I tried to ignore them. Emma was happy that I was advancing in my career, and most days it felt like we were slowly healing old wounds. One night, after a few glasses of wine, Dad even apologized for what happened with my college fund. "We made mistakes," he said, staring into his glass. I wanted to say more, to finally have that long overdue conversation, but Mom quickly changed the subject to Emma's upcoming school play. 3 years later, Emma turned 12, growing more mature each day. I had settled into my new role at work, traveling every few weeks but always coming home to my happy daughter. The loan payments were steady, the bills were paid, and life was stable, until that Tuesday evening. I remember it was Tuesday because I just closed a big deal in Phoenix and caught an early flight home, hoping to surprise Emma. But as soon as I arrived, I heard too many voices outside. Opening the front door, I stepped into chaos. On the freshly reupholstered couch was Lisa, and beside her were 2 kids, my niece and nephew, whose faces I recognized only from photos. Suitcases were scattered all over the living room, and Lisa was tapping away on her phone without even looking up. "Oh, look who's here," she said, clearly making it known I was interrupting something. In that moment, I knew everything was about to change again. And this time, I wasn't the naive 18-year-old I once was. I wasn't going to let history repeat itself. Lisa lazily announced from the couch, "You're staying here now, Tom." I stood there, work bag in hand, trying to process what I was hearing. My parents sat in their usual chairs, avoiding eye contact with me. The kids, my niece Anna, 10, and nephew Michael, 6, were sprawled on the floor, absorbed in their tablets. "You're staying here," I repeated slowly, reminding them that this was the house where I paid all the bills and covered the loan Lisa defaulted on. Lisa's face flushed red. "Oh, here we go. Miss Perfect with her money and her job. Some of us have real problems, Bella." "Actual problems," she snapped, and I could feel my blood pressure rising, as if taking out a huge loan in our parents' name and then not paying it was the worst kind of problem. "Girls, please," Mom interrupted at last, finally finding her voice. "We're family, we need to stick together in times like these." I let out a harsh laugh. Funny how family only matters when you need something. Where was this family spirit when you gave away my college fund, or didn't even invite me to Lisa's wedding? I snapped. "That was years ago." Mom retorted. "Why can't you let it go? Your sister needs us now." The next few weeks were tense. Lisa spent her days on the couch, texting and watching TV, while her kids ran wild through the house, leaving messes that never got cleaned up. What hurt the most was how my parents changed. Suddenly, Emma became invisible to them. When she showed Grandma her A on a math test, Mom simply waved her off, too busy helping Dad with his video games. When Emma asked Dad for their weekly chess match, he said he was too tired, right before spending 2 hours playing catch with Anna in the backyard. One evening after Emma went to bed, I confronted Mom. "What's going on? Why are you treating Emma differently?" But Mom dismissed me. "Emma's older. She doesn't need as much attention. Anna and Michael are younger. They need more support right now." I protested. "But Emma is 12, she needs her grandparents too." But Mom had already turned away, rushing off to answer Lisa's call for more cash. 2 months went by and everything felt off. I realized then that the past wasn't so easily erased. I was caught between the family I once knew and the new life I'd built with Emma. The tension, the unresolved hurt. It all weighed on me. Still, I vowed to stand up for what was right for Emma and for myself. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I was determined not to repeat the mistakes of the past. Even if it meant challenging the very people who had hurt me the most. I buried myself in work, taking on extra projects just to avoid coming home. Lisa still hadn't even looked for a job, and every time I mentioned it, my parents would defend her. "She's going through a rough patch," Dad would say. "She has kids to worry about." And Mom would echo, "Besides, you're the one paying all the bills." And I was. The loan, the utilities, the groceries that vanished before my eyes. But money wasn't the worst part. It was watching Emma slowly fade into a ghost in her own home. Then came that fateful Wednesday. I had come home early hoping to take Emma out for ice cream. A little escape when things got too heavy. Before I even opened the door, I heard shouting, "You lazy, good-for-nothing brat." Lisa's voice boomed through the house. "Look at this mess. Clean it up right now." I rushed in to find Lisa standing over Emma, who was on her knees picking up scattered toys. I recognized the toys as Michael's. "What's going on here?" I demanded. "Your precious princess refuses to help around the house," Lisa snapped. "She thinks she's too good to clean up after her cousins." "After her cousins?" I stared at the toys. "You mean your kids' mess? Where are they anyway?" I pressed. "They're napping," she retorted. "Someone's got to keep this house in order. And since you're never here because you're always working, I have to do it all." I exploded with anger. Unlike some people who laze around expecting everyone to pick up their slack, I couldn't stand it any longer. The argument that followed was ugly. Lisa bolted to our parents crying about how I was buying her, whatever that meant, and they immediately took her side. "Bella, you need to be more understanding," Mom pleaded while Lisa's kids chimed in. "What about my child?" I interrupted. "What about Emma?" But they never answered. They always chose Lisa over me. I never imagined what was coming next. The following week, I had to fly to Seattle for an emergency client meeting, just a 5-day trip. At breakfast that morning, I asked Emma for the 100th time, "You'll be okay, right?" She forced a smile. "I'll be fine, Mom. I've got my phone, we can video chat every night." 4 days into my trip, around 9 p.m. Seattle time, my phone rang. Emma's picture lit up the screen. "Mom," she sobbed in a tiny broken voice. "I'm outside. Aunt Lisa kicked me out. She said I was in the way. I only have my phone." The world stopped. My 12-year-old daughter was on the street at night, trembling with fear. I called Sarah, a friend who lived nearby, pleading, "Please, can you pick up Emma? She's outside my parents' house." I then called Lisa. On the 5th ring, she answered in an annoyed tone. "Oh, did the princess call you?" she sneered. "Maybe now she'll learn not to be so obstinate, always arguing, always acting like she's better than everyone else." I hung up and called my parents. When Mom answered, I said, voice ice cold, "Your granddaughter is on the street. Did you watch as Lisa threw her out?" There was a pause, then Mom's voice hardened. Maybe it's better this way, Bella. Maybe you and Emma should find somewhere else to live. You don't really fit here anymore." In that moment, everything became crystal clear. Some things never change and some people never will. "You're right, Mom," I said softly. "We don't fit here, we never did." I ended the call and booked the first flight home. It felt like the longest 5 hours of my life. Sarah sent updates on Emma every half hour. But I couldn't rest until I held my daughter in my arms again. When I finally reached Sarah's place at 3 a.m., I found Emma asleep on the couch, tear tracks still glistening on her cheeks. As I stroked her hair, Sarah whispered, "Bella, it's worse than you think." According to Emma, Lisa has been treating her like a servant for weeks, making her clean the house, cook for Lisa's kids, do their laundry. When Emma finally stood up for herself, saying she needed to study for a test, Lisa lost it. "Get out. Get out of my house, it's not your house," she screamed. Emma had told me that's when Lisa grabbed her arm and shoved her toward the door, while my parents just watched in silence. That night, after letting Emma sleep, I made calls. First to my rental agency to terminate the current lease early, then to my lawyer about my rights regarding all the appliances and furniture I'd bought for my parents' house, and finally to a moving company. The next morning, I took Emma to her favorite diner for breakfast. Baby, be honest with me, I said as I watched her pick at her pancakes. Has this happened before? Has Lisa hurt you? Emma's silence said it all. Finally, in a whisper, she admitted, I thought I was better than your kids. Grandma even said I needed to learn my place. My hand shook as I gripped my coffee cup. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. Because you seemed happy, Emma replied, looking up with those wise eyes that sometimes made me forget she was only 12. You were smiling more at Grandma and Grandpa. They were nice sometimes when Aunt Lisa wasn't around. I reached across the table and took her hand. Listen to me, Emma. Nothing is more important to me than you, not my parents, not their house, not any of it. We're going home to our apartment, and this time we're staying there. After breakfast, we drove back to my parents' house. Lisa's car was nowhere to be seen, probably off on one of her mysterious errands that never involved finding a job. Mom opened the door, surprise flickering across her face when she saw us. Bella, we didn't expect you back so soon, she said. I walked past her without a word, Emma's hand tight in mine. The moving crew I'd hired was waiting outside. Take everything I bought, I instructed them, the refrigerator, washing machine, dishwasher, new couch, TV. I led them through the house, pointing out every item I had purchased over the past 3 years. Panic rose in Mom's voice. You can't do this, we need those things. Actually, I can, I replied calmly, handing the movers my receipts. They're mine. Dad came home while the crew was working. He stood in the doorway watching as they dismantled the entertainment system I'd bought last Christmas. Bella, he started, but I cut him off. Don't you see? Lisa threw your granddaughter out on the street. You chose Lisa over me again, and this time you chose her over Emma too. We're done. Mom's voice trembled as she murmured, the bills. I turned to face them both. You'll have to figure that out yourselves, just like I had to figure out college on my own, and like Emma had to learn to survive being kicked out at night. Consider this my final payment for all the times you chose Lisa over me. The next few months were a whirlwind. My parents and Lisa didn't go down without a fight. Calls started coming in the very next day, from Mom, then Dad, then Lisa, then back to Mom. Voicemails were filled with angry accusations and tearful pleas. And the text messages were even worse. Screenshots of overdue bills, photos of Lisa's kids looking sad, and guilt trips about losing the house. Mom even sent pictures of my old bedroom, as if that would change my mind. Why don't you answer them? Emma asked one evening as my phone buzzed again. We sat on our apartment balcony, sharing a pizza and watching the sunset. Our apartment feels different now, I said. It's smaller than my parents' house but somehow more spacious, without the weight of their expectations. I added, because we don't owe them anything. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. Emma nodded, understanding in her eyes. I miss Grandpa's chess games sometimes, she admitted softly, but not the way they made me feel when Aunt Lisa was around. I pulled her close. We can get you chess lessons if you want. You deserve someone who'll play with you just because they care. Weeks turned into months. Through the family grapevine, I learned my parents had gone back to full-time work, struggling to pay their bills. The bank was threatening foreclosure because they couldn't keep up with the loan payments, and Lisa still wasn't working, still complaining about me to anyone who would listen. I redirected the money I'd been spending on their bills to take Emma on weekend trips instead. We visited theme parks, went hiking, and even took cooking classes together, free from the constant drama of my parents' house. I managed to focus more on my work while spending quality time with my daughter. Emma's grades improved without Lisa's kids interrupting her study time, and she even joined the school chess club and made new friends. Sometimes I caught her glancing at old photos of our time at my parents' house, but she never asked to go back. Almost a year later, one Sunday morning, I was making breakfast when Emma walked into the kitchen, looking thoughtful. Mom, are you happy now? She asked. I paused, whisk in hand, and really thought about it. Was I happy? Happy that I'd walked away from that toxic situation? Happy that I'd protected you? Happy that I'd finally broken free from always putting Lisa first? Yes, I said softly. Finally I am. And are you? Emma beamed. A bright, carefree smile I hadn't seen in years. Yeah, I like it just being us. Later that day, I deleted all my parents' numbers from my phone. I saved their voicemails in a folder labeled Never Again, a reminder of why we left, in case I ever doubted myself. I later heard from relatives that the bank had finally foreclosed on my parents' house. They moved into a tiny apartment, and Lisa found someone new to mooch off of, apparently her boyfriend. Sometimes I wonder if they ever really understood what they did wrong, or if they're still insisting I'm the selfish one. But honestly, I don't care anymore. Emma and I might be a small family, but we're a real one. We travel when we want, laugh when we want, and we never apologize for taking up space in our own home. The money I used to spend on my parents' bills now goes into Emma's college fund. And this time, nobody's going to give it away for someone else's wedding.